Many high functioning adults are being diagnosed with ADHD or autism in their 30s and 40s, and many of them are exhausted. Not just tired, exhausted in a way that feels cellular. Burnout that doesn't resolve with a weekend off. Burnout that feels different. And today I want to explore why. Because whether you identify as neurodivergent, recently diagnosed, self identifying, or simply overwhelmed, the nervous system layer matters. Let's begin here. Burnout is not always about workload. It is often about prolonged nervous system activation without adequate restoration. And for many adults with ADHD traits, autistic traits, or long standing masking patterns, that activation has been happening for decades, quietly, consistently, and often invisibly. Let's speak clinically for a moment, as I can as a former doctor. ADHD in adults may include difficulty sustaining attention, executive cognitive dysfunction, emotional reactivity, impulsivity, restlessness, sensitivity to rejection. Autism in high functioning adults may include sensory sensitivity, social exhaustion, a need for predictability, difficulty with transitions, intense focus, masking in social settings. Now, here is where the conversation deepens. Many of these traits require compensation in professional environments. High performing adults often learn to overstructure, over prepare, overperform, over mask. They become hyper competent. But compensation is not the same as regulation of your nervous system. Compensation costs energy, and masking costs even more. So, what is masking? Masking is the sustained effort to appear socially typical, to modulate your tone, to suppress any stimming, to rehearse your responses and monitor your facial expressions, to force eye contact, to match conversation rhythm, to override any sensory discomfort. And all of that requires a cognitive load, and a cognitive load activates the stress physiology. So the body remains slightly mobilized, ready to get out of there quickly, and that sympathetic activation increases, keeping your cortisol remaining elevated, your muscles remain braced, breathing becomes shallow, and then over time, this becomes a baseline. And when baseline activation remains high for too long, burnout is not surprising, it's predictable. Now, let's introduce another layer. Chronic stress can mimic ADHD symptoms because hypervigilance that comes with being under stress for a prolonged period of time will fragment your attention, and scanning for threats reduces your working memory. Sleep disruption worsens executive function. Emotional overwhelm increases impulsivity. Now, that does not mean that ADHD is not real. It means stress physiology can amplify symptoms. Biology and environment interact. Wiring and experience overlap. The nervous system doesn't care about ideology and labels, it cares about safety. Now, there's also something that's rarely discussed in high functioning neurodivergent adults. Achievement can become armor. So if you feel different early in life, being competent becomes your protection. And if social navigation feels uncertain, then performance creates a belonging. If rejection feels sharp, then overachieving reduces your vulnerability. And this pattern can continue into adulthood. Successful, respected, reliable, and in private, exhausted because performance replaced safety. So, autistic and ADHD burnout often feels different because it includes three layers. The first layer is the depletion of your thinking. Your brain feels foggy. Decision making becomes harder. Simple tasks feel complex. The second layer is the sensory overload. Lights feel brighter. Noise seems sharper. Crowds feel intolerable, and even clothing can feel irritating. The third layer is that social withdrawal because conversation becomes an effort. Text messages feel draining, and even relationships that are healthy can feel overwhelming. Now, this is not laziness, it's nervous system depletion. When a system has been mobilized for too long, it shifts towards collapse, and that collapse can look like depression. It can look like apathy. It can look like, I just don't care anymore. But underneath it is this nervous system exhaustion. Now, let's talk about what helps, not productivity hacks, not forcing discipline, and definitely not shaming yourself into a structure. Regulation first, always regulation first. So here's 4 principles. Number 1, reduce your cognitive load. Externalize tasks, use visible lists, simplify your decisions, and lower your expectations temporarily because executive functioning will improve when the threat reduces. Second, build predictable restoration, sensory friendly spaces, scheduling downtime, reducing noise, having breaks for movement, repetitive calming rituals. The nervous system stabilizes through rhythm. Third, address the masking consciously. Where in your life are you performing unnecessarily? Where can you reduce social exposure? Where can you allow yourself to stim? Move, pause, or speak more authentically because masking less often reduces that long term depletion. 4, restore safety in your body with breathing practices, grounded movement, cold exposure, splashing cold water on your face, ice plunges, warmth, touch, massage, eye contact with people who are safe. Not because these things are trendy, but because they signal safety biologically. Now, I want to say something very carefully. Receiving an ADHD or autism diagnosis in adulthood can be profoundly validating. It can explain decades of confusion. It can reduce shame. It can create community. There's nothing wrong with that. But validation is the beginning, not the end point. And identity can stabilize and it can shift. The nervous system still needs safety. You can understand your wiring and still be dysregulated. And you can have trauma adaptations layered on top of neurodevelopmental traits. This is not an either or, it's a both and. So if you're experiencing burnout and identifying with ADHD or autistic traits, consider this question. Have I been living my life in sustained compensation? Have I been overriding my body to appear competent? Have I equated productivity with worth? Because burnout often arrives when the body refuses further negotiation. It's not betrayal, it is boundary. High functioning adults are particularly vulnerable to late burnout because success hides strain. You may be respected, financially stable, professionally established, and internally still overwhelmed. And that internal external discrepancy creates confusion. How can I be successful and exhausted at the same time? Because performance and regulation are different systems. One can be strong while the other is depleted. So, this is why nervous system literacy matters more than label debates. Understanding your state allows you to intervene early. Comprehending your sensory thresholds prevents overloading. And once you work out your attachment patterns, that then prevents depletion in relationships. Because burnout is not solved by trying harder, it's softened by feeling safer. In the next episode, we're going to explore something closely related: why people with ADHD traits procrastinate, and why that procrastination is not laziness but nervous system protection. Until then, hold this gently. Whether your traits are neurodevelopmental, trauma adaptive, or both, you are not defective. You may be depleted, and depletion is reversible when safety is restored. You are not fixed, you are patterned, and patterns can shift.